Imagine waking up in a strange place with only $50 in your pocket and no concrete plan. Now, imagine that you ran away from home, rejected by your own family, unsure if you would ever be accepted again. That's how it all began for Miguel. At 18, he had nothing but a dream and a determination that no one could understand. While many young people his age were worried about parties in college, Miguel was struggling to survive, sleeping on the floor of a dirty kitchen and washing dishes for hours on end. But why would anyone choose such a difficult life? The answer is simple. He didn't choose it. Life pushed him there, rejected by his family for dreaming too big. Miguel knew that if he wanted to build something great, he would have to start from scratch. And starting from scratch for him meant running away from home with only $50 and clothes on his back. In the early days, everything felt like a nightmare. He was humiliated, ignored, and almost deported. Many times, he thought about giving up, but something inside him insisted on moving forward. Something no one could see, but that he felt deep in his soul. The belief that one day, all of it would make sense. And it did. Years later, the same man who was rejected by his family and ignored by the world became one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the United States. But how did he do it? How did someone who started with so little manage to build an empire? The answer lies in the details of his journey. In the moments he almost gave up, in the small victories no one saw, and in the mindset that set him apart from everyone else. This is Miguel's story. A story that begins with $50 but goes far beyond money. It's about resilience, overcoming adversity, and the courage to believe when no one else does. If you've ever felt lost, humiliated, or underestimated, this story is for you. Because, in the end, what defines success isn't where you start, but how far you're willing to go. Miguel arrived in the United States with a heart full of hope, but reality soon knocked on his door. The $50 that seemed like a fortune in his home country barely covered a week's worth of food there. He had nowhere to stay, didn't speak fluent English, and worse, didn't know anyone who could help him. In the first few days, he slept on park benches, hidden in dark alleys, afraid of being approached by the police or malicious people. His first job came as a dishwasher in a small restaurant. The pay was minimal, the hours were exhausting, and the boss was a rude man who didn't tolerate mistakes. Miguel was constantly humiliated, called useless and dumb immigrant. But he had no choice. That job was his only chance to avoid going hungry. He washed dishes until his hands hurt, cleaned filthy bathrooms, and carried heavy trash bags, all while watching other employees laugh at him. The nights were the worst. After an exhausting shift, he would drag himself to a corner of the restaurant's kitchen, where the owner allowed him to sleep on the floor, wrapped in an old blanket. The smell of grease and spoiled food clung to his clothes, but he couldn't complain. At least he had a roof, even if it was the roof of a dirty kitchen. There were moments when Miguel thought about giving up. He called home once, crying, asking for forgiveness, and saying he wanted to come back. But the response was harsh. You chose this. Now deal with the consequences. Those words hurt more than hunger or exhaustion. He was alone, completely alone. But it was precisely in that moment of despair that something changed inside him. Miguel realized that if he wanted to survive, he would have to stop seeing himself as a victim. He began studying English in his spare time, using old books he found in the trash. He learned to cook by watching the restaurant's chefs, even when he was scolded for wasting time. And little by little, he began to earn the trust of some co-workers who saw in him an unusual determination. That's how Miguel got his first raise. A small step, but one that meant everything to him. The extra money allowed him to rent a tiny room in a cheap boarding house. For the first time in months, he slept in a bed. It was an unforgettable night, but he knew it was just the beginning. Because while Miguel struggled to survive, he began to notice something important. Every dish he washed, every humiliation he endured, was shaping something inside him. Something no one could take away, his resilience. And it was that resilience that would lead him to the next step in his journey, a step that would change everything. Miguel was starting to get used to the tough but stable routine he had built. He was still washing dishes, but now he had a room to call his own and a small group of co-workers who respected him. However, The life of an undocumented immigrant is like walking a tightrope. One misstep, and everything can come crashing down. And that's exactly what happened. One day, as Miguel was walking to work, he was approached by immigration officers. They asked for his documents, and he, of course, didn't have them. His heart froze. He tried to explain, to beg, but the words wouldn't come out. Within minutes, he was taken to a detention center, locked up with dozens of other immigrants in the same situation. That was the darkest moment of Miguel's life. He felt like a criminal, even though all he wanted was a chance to work and build a decent life. The hours dragged on, and he couldn't stop thinking about everything he had been through. Had it all been in vain? Would he be deported back to a country where he no longer had a future? In the detention center, Miguel heard stories that made him reflect on his own journey. There were people who had fled war, hunger, and violence. He realized that despite everything, he was still lucky. He still had a dream. And it was that dream that kept him going, even when everything seemed lost. With the help of a pro bono lawyer referred by one of his restaurant co-workers, Miguel got a hearing with an immigration judge. He didn't have money to pay for a defense, but he had something many didn't. A genuine story and a determination that impressed even the judge. Miguel recounted his journey, from running away from home to his days of struggle in the United States. He talked about his dreams, his efforts to learn English, and his desire to contribute to the country he now called home. The judge, though unable to ignore the law, gave Miguel a chance. He was released on bail with the condition that he regularize his immigration status. It was a huge relief, but also a new challenge. Miguel now had to deal with bureaucracy, costs, and deadlines that seemed impossible for someone in his situation. But once again, he didn't give up. Miguel started working even harder, taking extra shifts and saving every penny he could. He knew that was the price of his freedom and his dream. And little by little, he began achieving small victories: a work visa, a social security number, the chance to breathe without fear. It was during this period that Miguel began to realize that his journey wasn't just about survival. It was about reinventing himself. He was learning to play by the rules of the game, even when the cards were stacked against him. And that mindset would prepare him for the next chapter of his life, a chapter he could never have imagined. Miguel was focused on surviving, but the universe seemed to have other plans for him. One day, while working at the restaurant, he noticed that the place was emptier than usual. The owner, a grumpy and always stressed man, seemed even more irritated. Miguel found out that the restaurant was on the verge of bankruptcy. Customers were going to a new establishment that had opened around the corner, with a more modern menu and competitive prices. That's when Miguel had an idea. He had been observing the restaurant's chefs for months, learning techniques and secrets of the kitchen. He also noticed what customers were saying, what they liked, what they complained about, what they wished for. He knew that with a few changes, the restaurant could become profitable again. With his heart pounding, Miguel approached the owner and made a bold proposal. He would take over the kitchen and help revitalize the restaurant. In return, he wanted a slightly higher salary and a percentage of the profits. The owner, desperate and with few options, agreed. Miguel didn't waste any time. He revamped the menu, introducing dishes that combined traditional flavors from his home country with modern touches. He also suggested changes in service and decor, creating a more welcoming and inviting atmosphere. And most importantly, he poured his soul into every dish that came out of the kitchen. The results weren't immediate, but little by little, customers started coming back. They praised the food, the service, and the energy of the place. The restaurant, which had been on the verge of closing, began to thrive. Miguel, who had once been just a dishwasher, was now the heart of the operation. This experience was a turning point for Miguel. He realized he had a talent for business and a vision that could transform not just a restaurant, but an entire community. He began to dream bigger, and for the first time, he felt that the dream wasn't just possible, it was within reach. But as always, challenges weren't far behind. The restaurant's success caught the attention of competitors, who didn't like seeing an immigrant rising to prominence. Miguel began facing boycotts, unfair criticism, and even threats. He knew that if he wanted to keep growing, he would have to be smarter, stronger, and more resilient than ever. It was at this point that Miguel decided to invest in himself. He began studying business and marketing, using books from the public library and free online courses. He also started building a network of contacts, meeting other entrepreneurs, and learning from their experiences. This phase of Miguel's life was marked by a mix of fear and excitement. He knew he was on the brink of something big, but he also understood that one mistake could cost him everything he had achieved. And it was this awareness that led him to make the most important decision of his life, to start his own business. Miguel knew that starting his own business was a huge risk. He had no savings, no investors, and no guarantee of success. But he also knew that if he didn't try, he would always wonder, what if? So, with the little he had saved and a modest loan from a co-worker, he took the first step. Miguel's first restaurant was small, with just a few tables and a cramped kitchen. He did everything himself. Cooking, serving customers, cleaning, and managing finances. The first few months were an emotional roller coaster. Some days were incredibly busy, with lines out the door. Others were so quiet that he questioned whether he had made the right choice. But Miguel didn't give up. He used each day as an opportunity to learn. When customers complained, he listened carefully and made adjustments. When dishes didn't turn out as planned, he practiced until he got them right. And little by little, the restaurant began to build a reputation. People talked about the delicious food, the warm service, and the inspiring story behind the place. However, the financial challenges were constant. Miguel often stayed up late, trying to balance the books and find ways to cut costs. He even sold some of his few belongings to pay suppliers. There were nights when he slept at the restaurant because he couldn't afford rent for his room. But even in the toughest moments, Miguel held on to his faith. He believed that if he kept working hard and listening to his customers, success would come. And he was right. One day, a local food critic visited the restaurant and wrote a glowing review in the newspaper. That week, the place was packed. Miguel could hardly believe what was happening. That was the turning point. The restaurant began attracting not only local customers, but also tourists who wanted to try the food everyone was talking about. Miguel hired his first team and started expanding the menu. He also used the story to connect with customers, creating an experience that went beyond food. It was about resilience, dreams, and overcoming adversity. However, success brought new challenges. Miguel now had to deal with the complexity of managing a team, maintaining service quality, and running a growing business. He made mistakes along the way, but each one was a valuable lesson. It was during this phase that Miguel began to understand the true meaning of entrepreneurship. It wasn't just about making money. It was about creating something that impacted people's lives. And he was doing just that. His restaurant wasn't just a place to eat. It was a symbol of hope for everyone who believed that, with hard work and determination, anything was possible. With the success of his first restaurant, Miguel began to dream even bigger. He didn't just want to be a successful entrepreneur. He wanted to create something that would leave a legacy. That's when he came up with the idea of opening a chain of restaurants, each with a unique concept, but maintaining the essence that had won over customers' hearts. The second restaurant was an even bigger challenge. This time, Miguel wanted something bolder, a space that combined gastronomy, culture, and art. He chose an up-and-coming neighborhood where costs were lower, but the potential was huge. With the experience he had gained from his first business, he managed to negotiate better deals with suppliers and attract investors who believed in his project. The opening of the second restaurant was an immediate success. The innovative concept and quality service caught the attention of not only customers, but also the media. Miguel began receiving invitations to events and interviews, where he shared his story and inspired others to pursue their dreams. However, expansion brought new challenges. Miguel now had to manage two establishments, each with its own dynamics and needs. He learned to delegate tasks and trust his team, but he also understood that, as a leader, his presence and vision were irreplaceable. It was during this phase that Miguel began thinking about how his business could impact the community. He created training programs for underprivileged youth, offering them the opportunity to learn a trade and build a better future. He also started sourcing ingredients from local producers, strengthening the local economy and promoting sustainable practices. These initiatives not only enhanced the restaurant's reputation, but also gave Miguel a greater sense of purpose. He realized that his success wasn't just about him. It was about how he could use his journey to transform the lives of others. But as always, the challenges didn't stop there. Expansion required significant investments, and Miguel had to deal with financial pressures and growing expectations. He knew that to keep growing, he would need to constantly innovate and adapt to market changes. That's when he had an idea that would change everything, creating a digital platform that connected small producers with restaurants and consumers. He wanted to democratize access to quality ingredients while supporting family farmers. The project was ambitious, but Miguel believed it was the next natural step in his journey. And so, he began working on this new idea, knowing that, once again, he was venturing into uncharted territory. But this time, he wasn't alone. He had an incredible team, a network of supporters, and a mindset that pushed him to go further. Just as Miguel was beginning to reap the rewards of his expansion, a global crisis shook the world. Overnight, restaurants were forced to close, events were canceled, and the once bustling streets became empty. The pandemic brought with it a wave of uncertainty that no one was prepared to face. For Miguel, it was a devastating blow. His restaurants, once full of life, were now empty. Reservations were canceled, and bills began piling up. He found himself facing an impossible decision: keep the restaurants open, risking the health of his staff and customers, or close the doors and lose everything he had built. Miguel chose to close temporarily, but the decision came at a great emotional cost. He had to lay off beloved employees, negotiate with creditors, and deal with the anguish of watching his dream crumble. The nights were long, and the weight of responsibility felt unbearable. But even at his lowest point, Miguel didn't give up. He knew that if he had overcome so many obstacles in the past, he could find a way through this crisis too. He began adapting, looking for alternatives to keep the business alive. The first change was investing in delivery and takeout. Miguel revamped the menu to offer options that worked well for takeout and created meal kits that customers could prepare at home. He also used social media to connect with his audience, sharing cooking tips, inspirational stories, and even live streams from the restaurant's kitchen. These initiatives helped maintain a minimal income, but Miguel knew he needed to do more. That's when he came up with the idea of creating a subscription club, where customers would receive monthly boxes with fresh ingredients and exclusive recipes. The project was a success, attracting not only loyal customers, but also new ones who wanted to support small businesses during the crisis. Additionally, Miguel used his platform to support the community. He organized campaigns to donate meals to families in need and collaborated with other entrepreneurs to create a mutual support network. These actions not only strengthened his brand, but also gave his business an even greater sense of purpose. Slowly but surely, Miguel's restaurant began to recover. When restrictions eased, he reopened with a new concept, prioritizing safety and customer experience. And, to his surprise, people returned with even more enthusiasm, appreciating the effort and resilience he had shown. The crisis, though painful, taught Miguel valuable lessons. He learned to be more agile, to innovate under pressure, and to value every detail of his business. And most importantly, he understood that true success isn't measured solely by profit, but by the ability to reinvent oneself and positively impact people's lives. After overcoming the crisis, Miguel realized that his journey wasn't just about building a business empire. It was about creating a legacy that could inspire others to believe in their dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. That's when he decided to share his story in a way that could impact lives beyond the walls of his restaurants. Miguel began writing a book, detailing every challenge, every moment of doubt, and every victory that brought him to where he was. He wanted people to see that success isn't a straight line, but a series of ups and downs that require resilience and determination. The book became a bestseller, touching hearts and minds around the world. In addition, he created a foundation to support young entrepreneurs from underserved communities. The foundation offered mentorship, financial resources, and access to networks, helping turn ideas into real businesses. For Miguel, it was a way to give back everything life had given him and to ensure that others had the opportunities he had fought so hard to achieve. But Miguel's impact didn't stop there. He began receiving invitations to speak at global events, sharing his story and inspiring audiences with his message of perseverance and hope. His words resonated not only with entrepreneurs, but with anyone who had ever faced adversity and needed a reminder that it was possible to overcome. Meanwhile, his restaurants continued to thrive, now with an international presence. Miguel had built a brand that represented not only quality food, but also values like inclusion, sustainability, and innovation. He had become an example of how to build a profitable business without compromising ethics or purpose. However, Miguel knew that his true legacy wasn't in the awards or recognition, but in the lives he touched every day. It was in the young person who started their first business thanks to the foundation's mentorship, the family who could put food on the table because he bought their products, and the customer who felt inspired to pursue their own dreams after reading his book. As he looked back at everything he had built, Miguel realized that his journey was much bigger than himself. It was about showing the world that no matter where you start, you can achieve great things if you're willing to fight for them. It was about proving that adversity isn't the end, but the beginning of a story of triumph. Miguel had run away from home with just $50, but today he wasn't just a successful entrepreneur. He was a symbol of hope, a beacon for everyone who believed that, with courage and determination, dreams could become reality. With his empire established and his foundation transforming lives, Miguel could have chosen to rest and enjoy the success he had achieved. But he knew there was still much more to be done. This time, his gaze turned beyond the borders of his own country. He wanted to take his message of resilience and entrepreneurship to the world, especially to regions where opportunities were scarce and dreams were often abandoned. Miguel began traveling to developing countries, where he encountered stories that echoed his own journey. He saw talented young people without access to education, women entrepreneurs battling cultural barriers, and entire communities trapped in cycles of poverty. These experiences inspired him to expand the reach of his foundation, creating programs tailored to each reality. In Africa, he helped implement sustainable agriculture projects, teaching techniques that increased productivity and ensured food security. In Latin America, he supported artisan cooperatives, connecting them to global markets through digital platforms. And in Asia, he invested in tech education, preparing young people for the jobs of the future. Each project was challenging, requiring adaptation to different cultures, languages, and contexts. But Miguel saw this as an opportunity to learn and grow. He believed that to create real impact, it was essential to listen to the needs of the communities and work alongside them, not just impose solutions. Meanwhile, his restaurants became ambassadors of this global vision. He created menus that celebrated cultural diversity, using ingredients and recipes from places where he worked. Each dish told a story, connecting customers to distant realities and inspiring them to think beyond their own worlds. But, as always, challenges were never far away. Miguel faced bureaucracy, mistrust, and even threats in some places. There were moments when he questioned whether he was making a difference or simply wasting resources on projects that wouldn't yield concrete results. Then, he received a letter from a young Kenyan woman named Amina. She had participated in one of the agriculture programs and, thanks to what she had learned, was able to increase her family's production and pay for her siblings' education. In the letter, she wrote, "You showed me that, even in the most difficult circumstances, we could be agents of our own change. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." That letter was a powerful reminder of the impact Miguel was making. He realized that, although the challenges were great, the small victories, like Amina's, were what truly mattered. It was these stories that motivated him to keep going, even when the path seemed uncertain. Miguel was building something much bigger than a business empire. He was creating a global network of hope, where every person helped became a link in a chain of transformation. And he knew that, as long as there were dreams to be realized, his journey would be far from over. As Miguel continued to expand his global impact, he began to realize that the relentless pace of his life was taking a toll. The long trips, endless meetings, and constant pressure to maintain and grow his projects were leaving little room for what truly mattered: his health, his family, and his emotional well-being. One day, during a business trip, Miguel fainted. The doctor said it was a warning from his body. The excessive stress and lack of self-care were starting to affect his health. It was a wake-up call for him. He had overcome so many obstacles, but now he was facing a silent enemy, himself. Miguel was forced to take a break. For the first time in years, he stopped to reflect on his life. He realized that in his relentless pursuit of success and impact, he had neglected the most important things. His family, who had always supported him, felt his absence. His closest friends hardly saw him anymore, and he no longer recognized himself in the mirror. The man who had started with a simple dream was now lost in a sea of commitments and responsibilities. That's when Miguel decided to rethink his priorities. He began delegating more tasks, trusting his team to lead projects while he focused on regaining balance. He also started setting aside time for his family, reconnected with his wife and children, and rediscovering the joy of simple things like a home-cooked dinner or a walk in the park. But the biggest change was internal. Miguel began practicing mindfulness and meditation, learning to be present in the moment and to appreciate the now. He also started journaling, reflecting on his achievements, mistakes, and dreams. These practices helped him find a new meaning for his journey, not as an endless race, but as a path of growth and self-discovery. This personal transformation had a profound impact on his businesses and social projects. Miguel realized that by taking care of himself, he became a more inspired and compassionate leader. His team noticed a change and felt more motivated, and his projects gained a new dimension, focused not just on results, but also on well-being and sustainability. Miguel also began sharing this new phase of his life with the public. He spoke openly about his personal struggles and the importance of mental health, especially for entrepreneurs and leaders. His honesty resonated with thousands of people who saw themselves in his struggles and found the courage to seek balance in their own lives. This period of introspection and renewal showed Miguel that true success isn't measured solely by external achievements, but by the ability to live a fulfilling and meaningful life. He had built an empire, but now he was building something even more valuable, a life that made sense. With new perspective on life and a lighter heart, Miguel began thinking about the future. He didn't want his legacy to be limited to the businesses or social projects he had created. He wanted something that would continue to inspire and transform lives even after he was gone. That's when he decided to create a school of entrepreneurship and innovation, focused on empowering young people from all backgrounds to build their own dreams. The school, named Dreams Without Borders, was designed to be accessible and inclusive. It offered both online and in-person courses, scholarships for underprivileged students, and a curriculum that combined practical skills with personal development. Miguel wanted students not only to learn how to run businesses, but also to cultivate resilience, empathy, and purpose. The project was a success from the start. Young people from all over the world enrolled. Eager to learn from Miguel's experience and from other entrepreneurs he invited to share their stories. The school became a space for exchange and inspiration, where ideas were nurtured and dreams were encouraged to grow. But Miguel didn't stop there. He also created an investment fund to support startups led by the school's alumni. The fund not only provided seed capital, but also mentorship and access to a network of contacts. Many of these startups became success stories, creating jobs and positively impacting their communities. Meanwhile, Miguel continued to travel and share his story, but now with a different focus. He spoke not just about building empires, but about living a life of meaning. His speeches and books address topics like balance, purpose, and the importance of taking care of oneself and others. This new phase of Miguel's life was marked by a sense of fulfillment. He saw the impact of his work in every young person who landed their first job, in every family lifted out of poverty thanks to a business created at the school, and in every community transformed through sustainable projects. But more than that, Miguel felt he was fulfilling his greater purpose. He had started with a simple dream, to change his life, and in pursuing that dream, he had ended up transforming the lives of thousands. He knew his legacy wasn't just in what he had built, but in the seeds he had planted, which would continue to grow for generations. As he looked to the future, Miguel felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the challenges that had made him stronger, for the people who had supported him along the way, and for the opportunity to make a difference in the world. He had run away from home with just $50, but today his legacy was immeasurable. Miguel was at the peak of his career, with a global empire, a school transforming lives, and a legacy that would continue to impact the world for generations. But instead of resting on his laurels, he decided that his final grand project would be something that tied together all the lessons he had learned throughout his life. He wanted to create a global movement of conscious entrepreneurship, where success was measured not just by profit, but by the positive impact on society and the planet. This movement, called Entrepreneurship with Purpose, brought together leaders, entrepreneurs, educators, and activists from around the world. Together, they built a collaborative network, sharing knowledge, resources, and best practices to create businesses that were economically viable, socially just, and environmentally sustainable. Miguel traveled the world to promote the movement, hosting conferences, workshops, and awareness campaigns. He wanted to show that it was possible to balance financial success with social and environmental responsibility. And little by little, the movement gained momentum, inspiring businesses to adopt more ethical practices and governments to create policies that encourage sustainable entrepreneurship. But for Miguel, the true success of the movement lay in the individual stories. He met farmers who adopted sustainable techniques thanks to the training programs, women who built businesses that empowered their communities, and young people who found purpose in conscious entrepreneurship. Each story was proof that entrepreneurship could be a powerful force for good. Meanwhile, Miguel continued to take care of himself, maintaining a balance between work, family, and well-being. He knew that to inspire others, he needed to be an example of fulfilling and meaningful life. And gradually, he began spending more time with his family, rediscovering the joy of simple things and celebrating achievements that went beyond business. At the end of his journey, Miguel looked back and saw not just an empire built, but a life lived with purpose. He had started with a simple dream, and in pursuing it, had ended up transforming not only his own life, but also the lives of thousands around the world. And as he reflected on everything he had accomplished, Miguel realized that true success wasn't in what he had built, but in what he had inspired. He had shown the world that, with courage, resilience, and a heart full of purpose, it was possible to turn dreams into reality and, at the same time, make a difference in the world. So, Miguel's story didn't end with a happy ending. It ended with a beginning for all those who, inspired by his journey, decided to pursue their own dreams and build a better world. And, in the end, that was the greatest legacy he could leave